It's my nerd world, and welcome to it, a Star Wars podcast. On the show this week, we have some news about Rogue Squadron. Patty Jenkins, the director of Rogue Squadron, is shifting her schedule around, apparently, to make room for fitting in Rogue Squadron and being able to film it. So we'll give you some details on that. We have casting news for the Acolyte, a returning character from The Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett. Star Wars Newsnet has that story. Speaking of stories, we'll tell you the story of Starkiller Base. I love these added details that we get from the theatrical releases. Really great stuff from StarWars.com. The main focus of the show today, though, is going to be this High Republic-era video game Eclipse. And I'll be honest with you, it looks fantastic. So we'll get into details of that on the show this week. Before we get started, though, with the Star Wars podcast, I want to talk a little bit about podcasts themselves. I love finding new podcasts, and for those of you listening of a certain age that remember VH1 Behind the Music, I used to love these little hour-long documentaries of various artists and bands back from the late 90s. And one of the things that was so fantastic about Behind the Music was the content was so good that even if it was a band that you didn't necessarily like, or an artist that you didn't necessarily like, or weren't even that familiar with, the documentaries were still really, really captivating. And that's one of the things that I love about finding new podcasts, because on occasion, you find a podcast about a topic that maybe you're not personally into, but the hosts are, and it's so compelling, you find yourself listening to it over and over again and learning something new about a subject that you didn't know anything about and never thought you had any interest in. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about this podcast that I found called Bourbon Pursuit. Now listen, I'm not a big bourbon drinker, I'm not a big whiskey drinker, but this is a fantastic podcast, and it really is because of how knowledgeable the hosts are and the guests that they have on. Now, if you are a bourbon fan, this podcast is definitely for you, because if you find yourself looking at all the bourbon on the store shelves and you don't know where to start or the differences, especially with the holidays here, right? Vacation's coming up, you're going to want to stock up on your bourbon. If you enjoy bourbon but want to know more about the science, the history, and the stories behind the label, like, did you know that bourbon is a distinctive product for the United States? I didn't know that until I listened to this podcast. It can't be produced anywhere else in the world. And no, not all bourbon has to be made in Kentucky. Again, I found this out by listening to Bourbon Pursuit. If you think you like bourbon, get ready to love bourbon. Bourbon Pursuit is the official podcast of bourbon. Now, they are the best source for all news, reviews, and interviews with people with regard to bourbon and in the bourbon whiskey industry. There's 3 new episodes every week as well, which is just fantastic. You can learn the next bourbon trends, the personalities behind your favorite brands, get the juicy scoop on all things whiskey as well, and find out about, all the different great bottles available, right? Past guests have included master distillers, CEOs, brand ambassadors from every major distillery, authors, bloggers, industry insiders, celebrities, retailers, and unique consumers who are on the hunt for rare bourbons. You can take your knowledge from being a bourbon novice to a bourbon baron. And again, if you've never even thought about listening to a podcast and just about bourbon and just want to find something new, I'm telling you, the hosts, Kenny Coleman, Ryan Cecil, and Fred Minnick, they take you on a fantastic, epic bourbon adventure, and it really is great, compelling stuff. So, subscribe and follow Bourbon Pursuit wherever you go and get your podcasts. All right, now let's go ahead and dive into this week's show.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd road.
Just let it in.
It is my Nerd World of Star Wars podcast, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Glad you're with the show this week. Speaking of podcasts, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Zach over at Knights of Vader. This week's podcast and their lengthy discussion with the host about the Galactic Star Cruiser hotel and interactive experience at Walt Disney World in Florida is an absolute must listen. For those that aren't up to speed on this whole thing, we're not going to spend time with it on the show today, apart from this little tidbit. But there's this hotel that's supposed to be as if you're getting on this Galactic Star Cruiser within Star Wars called the Halcyon. And you spend 2 days there, and it's this completely immersive, interactive experience that costs like $5,000 or $6,000. Sounds awesome. The video they put out was atrocious. I agree with so many of the people who say that it looks more like Fifth Element or Star Trek than it does Star Wars. But on Knights of Vader this past week, Zach and the hosts and the guest hosts on there really they spent about 2 hours talking about it, and it was a fantastic discussion. So definitely go and check that podcast out. It is a must listen because the promotional video they put out, they actually yanked it down off of YouTube. It was just that bad. All right, we got some news items to get into before we get into the core content this week. And once again, if you're a Star Wars fan and you follow the releases that are, that Disney announces, you know one thing for certain.
This is not going to go the way you think.
So Deadline has put out a story over the course of the past few days that says, following the massive success of directing the Marvel series Falcon and Winter Soldier, Kari Skogland looks to have found her next project and will be teaming up with another superhero star in the process. Sources tell Deadline that Skogland is set to direct Paramount's Cleopatra, starring Gal Gadot. Now, Skogland is stepping in for Patty Jenkins, who was attached to direct and is pivoting to a producing role. Jenkins fell off as director so she could focus on her next two projects, Wonder Woman and Star Wars Rogue Squadron. So, what does this mean as far as Rogue Squadron is concerned? I have absolutely no idea. We were supposed to get another announcement about the movie that we're supposed to get at the end of 2023, right? Or was it 2022? We're not supposed to get a movie by the end of next year, right? It's 2023. No, I even forgot. So I have no idea where Rogue Squadron is going to fall in terms of the timeline or what movie that we're supposed to get next. But apparently, despite all the controversies and the stories that we've heard, right, we know that it was delayed and they hadn't canceled the movie completely. But I don't think that this means we're going to be getting Rogue Squadron anytime soon or that Rogue Squadron is moving back to its original release date. I just think it means that eventually we will get this movie. And this was probably part of the discussions around the delaying of Rogue Squadron. I just wish that they would go and announce a live-action film already. And then stick with it. All right. In casting news, Variety is reporting that Amanda Stenberg is in talks to join the Disney Plus Star Wars series, The Acolyte. Details on the character Stenberg would play are being kept under wraps, but an acolyte in the Star Wars universe is typically referred to as a Sith, who has just begun their training under an experienced Sith Lord. This, of course, was prior to Sith Lord Darth Bane, according to the Variety article, instituting the Rule of Two, under which there are only ever two Sith in existence at one time, a master and an apprentice. Let me say that correctly. Disney and Lucasfilm previously confirmed The Acolyte will take place in the final days of the High Republic era, and we're going to talk more about the High Republic era coming up in a bit, of the Star Wars timeline. And will focus on the emergence of secretive dark side powers. For context, the High Republic era is said to have ended about 50 years prior to the events of the Phantom Menace. Stenberg, an absolutely beautiful woman, broke out in her role in the 2012 feature adaptation as a very young character in the Hunger Games. She has since gone on to star in films like The Hate You Give, The Darkest Minds, Everything, and the recent feature version of Dear Evan Hansen. And look, again, we don't know anything else other than that. She has an absolutely stunning look about her, and her potential of playing a Sith underling, I find really, really intriguing. So again, just some casting news, and as I said last week, I'm fairly convinced that Disney uses Deadline to put out their press releases. Why Disney just doesn't do it themselves, I do not know. But be that as it may, this is, how this happens. All right, Star Wars Newsnet has a bit of rumor about the Book of Boba Fett that will be debuting here in a couple of weeks.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
That's true, and they have some leaked information. Spoilers ahead. Like ahoy, but different. Rumor is we can see the return of a fan-favorite character in the Book of Boba Fett. So we're less than 3 weeks away, writes Star Wars Newsnet, from the premiere of the highly anticipated return of the bounty hunter Boba Fett and his explanation and backstory of what really happened after his unfortunate demise and return to the Jedi and his resurrection in The Mandalorian. We've recently heard a very interesting rumor, they say, about a fan-favorite character that could be returning to the Book of Boba Fett. They've heard from a credible source that Grogu was spotted on some crew merchandise used for the Book of Boba Fett. Well, that's interesting. The crew merchandise is usually produced in small quantities and is meant for special people involved in the project. On rare occasions, there is merch produced in even smaller quantities, and we believe that Grogu merch was one of them. Knowing that there is official Grogu merch from the Book of Boba Fett, we've reached out to our sources to find out if we can expect to see the little green fella in the series, and we've received confirmation that indeed we will get a glimpse of Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett, which would tie into some of the rumors that we've heard of existing Star Wars characters like Luke Skywalker, potentially Han Solo, sort of moving in and out of this series, right? And again, the title in and of itself of the Book of Boba Fett really does, in my mind, lend itself to telling a story where, it's done in chapters, much like The Mandalorian, and, Boba's involvement could be very loose, right? It could just be sort of a passing through as we get to focus on a chapter in the Book of Boba Fett that may not necessarily be specifically about Boba Fett. Getting back to the article, though, it says, the appearance of Grogu in the upcoming Disney Plus series is really not that far-fetched, knowing how popular the character is and the fact that the Book of Boba Fett was always a sequel to The Mandalorian Season 2, once being referred to as The Mandalorian Season 2.5. Still, we want to stress this is just a rumor for now, right? Which hence why I played the goofy sounder.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
That's right. It, of course, has not been confirmed by Disney or Lucasfilm, so be cautious with your expectations and just enjoy the ride, they say. Well, we will. I'm enjoying the ride very much. So, speaking of enjoying the ride, right? So, this trailer dropped. And apparently, there was a lot of leaking of this trailer. I did from what I gather, this wasn't supposed to be announced the way that it was with this Star Wars Eclipse video game. Okay, so Quantic Dream is a video game production company. Now, look, I play video games. I'm kind of exclusive to, like, outside the Star Wars realm, like Halo, and my NASCAR Ignition sucks so bad. I'm still playing NASCAR Heat 5, even though the paint schemes are old. If you happen to be a NASCAR fan, you know what I'm talking about. But I love playing the Star Wars games, right? I mean, I used to play the old Battlefront games. I played the Knights of the Old Republic games. I wouldn't say that I'm a gamer by any stretch. I don't follow the majority of the companies, right, that build these games, apart from EA and, hearing about Quantic Dream and things like this. Play Jedi Fallen Order. I play Jedi Starfighter on Battlefront 2 on an almost daily basis. If you ever want to try to blow me up, Jon Justice is my gamer tag on the Xbox One. So, I'd heard about this game and that Quantic Dream makes fantastic video games, but I really had no expectation of it. And then suddenly this week, the trailer dropped for it, and holy cow, does it look amazing! It looks absolutely amazing.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
Yeah, that thing that was inside me, that's always been there, was a desire to try to get excited for the High Republic era, and now I am. So I have some details for you from this. So a couple of different sources here. We're going to pull a little bit from the StarWars.com article, a little bit from Bespin Bulletin as well. Apparently, Star Wars Eclipse is still potentially many years away. Rumors are from Bespin Bulletin that 2024 is at the earliest when we can expect the title, and that they believe that Knights of the Old Republic, the remake, will release before Eclipse comes out. Apparently, this is an action-adventure. It's based on interactive storytelling. It's open world. Next-gen only, so I'm going to have to get an Xbox. What's the new one? Forgot what the new one was. The S? I don't know what it is. Multiplayer elements, right? And it's apparently an ambitious and original project. Now, I'm not worried about getting a new gaming system by 2024. We'll probably all need to have new gaming systems as it is. As the first video game set in the High Republic era, the multimedia initiative that launched with publishing earlier this year, Star Wars Eclipse will feature an original story with unique characters, each with their own paths and abilities and roles to play in the tapestry of events that could alter the carefully balanced piece in an uncharted section of the Outer Rim. This trailer looks awesome. Look, even if you are not a gamer, and if you have no intention of playing video games, go on YouTube and find Star Wars Eclipse cinematic reveal trailer. And what it does is it pulls the cinematic elements between the different levels together to create this trailer. It looks amazing. It's clear that a lot of the artwork and ship design was taken from the Doug Chiang early prequel Phantom Menace era concept art. But this is the first thing that I've seen that has me legitimately excited for the High Republic era, to the point where I almost want to go and start reading some of the material just because now I have a better frame of reference in terms of visuals than what we'd seen so far just with the concept art and the art that's been given for the High Republic era, which just had not excited me at all. Seeing this made me want a movie. I'm like, give me this High Republic era movie because it looks fantastic. All right, so for the podcast this week, I'm going to run through the 5 highlights from the Star Wars Eclipse cinematic trailer. In a surprise announcement at the Game Awards, Lucasfilm Games' Quantic Dream revealed this stunning cinematic reveal trailer for Star Wars Eclipse, currently in development, set during the High Republic era, as I mentioned. So, here is, again, 5 highlights from the reveal trailer. The mystery of the drums and the eclipse. The trailer kicks off with a gray humanoid alien preparing to play an ancient-looking drum in what seems to be some kind of ritual. He soon is joined by others, and the rhythm builds and builds to a fevered pitch. And someone, we witness an eclipse. It creates a decidedly ominous tone, and only at the end do we come to understand what it might all mean. We get a few tantalizing glimpses of Jedi in this era, including a sparring match, Master Yoda in the council chambers, and 2 guardians of peace and justice igniting their sabers for battle. While we've been treated to Star Wars High Republic storytelling throughout the year and have met many heroic Jedi, encountered the villains of the Nihil, and experienced the Horder of the Drengir, the Eclipse trailer throws tons of newness at us. There's a one-eyed Duros in a bustling market, beautiful planets of rock and green that we've yet to visit, unidentified armies marching, and much more, not to mention those mysterious drummers at the beginning. In what looks to be an epic clash as good as anything seen in any Star Wars film, a squadron takes flight to the Trade Federation battleships. It's fast, explosive, and 100% Star Wars. And the prequel vibes on this, the Trade Federation battleships look different, right? Because they would. Again, they gotta age them in reverse, right? But holy cow, do the ship and the ship design absolutely look fantastic. Different enough to know that you're looking at something in a separate Star Wars era, but still familiar enough for it to absolutely feel like Star Wars. Certainly more than Star Wars Galaxy Cruiser, or Galactic Cruiser. All right. And then at the end, as the drums reach their apex and the eclipse is complete, a dark figure rises from a black pool. Who or what is it remains to be seen, but as the famous Star Wars saying goes, I have a bad feeling about this. Yeah, I watched it the first time, and I was floored. I was just like, yes, give me that. Give me High Republic era. If that's the aesthetic we're going to have and the vibe, it looks fantastic. And one of the reasons why, because it does look like that lived-in universe, and that's the vibe I just was not getting from any of the High Republic material that I had seen and the visuals that I'd seen so far. So this, however, definitely nailed it in tone. Go and watch the video. Trust me, it's fantastic. I've watched it 5 times already. All right, let's get on to the next story.
When I found you,
That's right.
I saw raw,
Yeah, you did.
untamed power.
It's true. Totally did.
And beyond that,
Yeah?
something truly special.
No, hey now. Star Wars Intel, right? It's a feature where Lucasfilm Story Group member Emily Shokokani, whose job it is to know as much about the galaxy far, far away as possible, explores obscure facts about Star Wars lore and continuity. In this installment, she explores Starkiller Base. This is a really interesting article, and I love it when we get more backstory, especially when it comes to the films, that really do allow you to go and watch the movie again with a different perspective. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to share it on the podcast this week. I'm going to read it to you so you don't have to read it yourself. Aren't I special? What kind of good... Look, that's right. I'm a good podcast host. Because I read the stuff so that you don't have to go and read it. And I do it with style and flair. At least I like to think I do. Okay, then. On a frigid world in the unknown regions, the First Order amassed in the shadows while perfecting the centerpiece of its campaign of tyranny. Starkiller, inspired by the might of the Empire and its Death Star, the First Order aimed to create something with much more firepower. Using the Empire's research on dark energy, a mysterious force tied to the very fabric of the universe, Starkiller was born. Prior to Starkiller's discovery, Resistance pilot Poe Dameron and Resistance spy Kazuda Ziono. I've watched that show. I can't believe I was stumbling on the name. See, that's what kind of good podcast host I am. They traveled to a system in the unknown regions where Kaz learned of the First Order activity as seen in Star Wars Resistance animated series. Upon reaching the sector, Poe Dameron's ship's sensors indicated that they were in the Dassault system. However, the star of the system was mysteriously gone. Further investigating the area, the 2 Resistance pilots found that some of the planets had been cored, and as a result, virtually destroyed. What Poe and Kaz didn't know at the time was that they were looking at the test subjects for the First Order's Starkiller weapon. Dark energy, abundant in the galaxy, powered Starkiller's weapon. Harvesting it, however, was not thought possible until the First Order's success. Using research from the Empire's Project Celestial Power, the same program that helped create the Death Star, the First Order used the power of the sun to focus and gather dark energy with collector arrays. The First Order had discovered, though, that the most effective way to store the dark energy was by using a planet's natural magnetic field, hence the need to core planets. This, combined with an additional and artificial containment field maintained by the First Order, stored the energy as the weapon charged. Once the star was completely consumed, the weapon was ready to fire. Unlike the Death Star, which required being within the same system or in close proximity to its target in order to effectively use its weapon, Starkiller Base fired through the vast distances of space. This was due to the dark energy the weapon collected. While stored within the core of Starkiller, that dark energy took on a new state called phantom energy. When fired, the phantom energy used sub-hyperspace to reach systems halfway across the galaxy. Sub-hyperspace was a term created by the First Order to describe the way the phantom energy traveled across the stars. Whereas hyperspace exists across the galaxy, sub-hyperspace is a dimension that runs through the galaxy. The phantom's energy, unique properties, and use of sub-hyperspace was what allowed people from across the galaxy to see it streak through the stars and destroy its target. Hence why we all saw that, oddly, in The Force Awakens and wondered, how can that be? Well, I just told you. Because they just gave us a really cool explanation for it. Take that, sequel haters. Due to the volatile nature of dark energy, Starkiller required a thermal oscillator, which was largely responsible for maintaining the First Order's artificial containment field. The oscillator prevented the base from destabilizing while harvesting and storing dark energy. However, when the Resistance learned that this oscillator, thermal oscillator, was the base's weak point, they quickly devised a plan to destroy their weapon. Direct hit, yeah, but no damage. Requiring a sun for each charge of its weapon, the planet-turned base was capable of moving thanks to thrusters located on the opposite side of the weapon's massive barrel, which is really convenient because we never saw that side of the planet. I would have liked to, though. I love these articles. After discovering the resistance base on Dakar, the First Order moved Starkiller to consume another star and thus began charging its weapon. As Starkiller targeted the base, the Resistance mobilized in order to reach the thermal oscillator. The Resistance needed to get past Starkiller's shield. Using a dangerous trick, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Finn bypassed the shield by exiting hyperspace aboard the Millennium Falcon just past its barrier, essentially flying faster than the shield's refresh rate within a second, resulting in a crash landing, something the Falcon did a lot in the sequel trilogy. I never understood that in The Rise of Skywalker, by the way. Love that film, but we've got a problem with the landing gear. Why do they still have to crash it? I mean, couldn't you just have set it down? Didn't have to slide to a stop again. Just saying. Still love that movie, though. As Starkiller targeted the base, the Resistance mobilized in order to reach the thermal oscillator. The Resistance needed to get past the shield. I've already read all of that. I've gone backwards now, so let's move forward. Finn led the Rebel veterans and successfully disabled the planet's shields, this allowing the Resistance fighters that had amassed over the planet to enter its atmosphere and began targeting the thermal oscillator, although they still needed help from the ground team. After planning charges along the critical shaft leading to the oscillator, Chewbacca detonated the explosives, revealing a direct path to the weak point. Poe Dameron then flew his X-Wing and bombarded the oscillator with his fighter's firepower. With Starkiller actively charging its weapon in Poe's attack on the oscillator, the weapon was quickly destabilized, and the dark energy stored at the core, along with the power of the sun it had consumed, unsettled, and the base quickly collapsed on itself. And you know what everybody thought who was on Starkiller base at that point in time?
This is not going to go the way you think.
It's true. Starkiller both imploded and then exploded, resulting in the planet turning into a microstar. That's like a star, but much smaller. Teeny tiny. The star was officially called Solo. Right? Because it had no family name. No, it was to honor the fallen veteran who lost his life on the base. So there you go. A little background on Starkiller base. It had thrusters on the other side of the planet that we never saw. That's how it moved around. That's pretty cool. No, man, I do. Seriously, I love these articles. Again, I just love the fact that it provides a little bit more detail that you didn't have before. And for that, I seriously dig it. But what do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. What is that? That's my address, where you can email me. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. No listener feedback this week. I did get a question from Miranda Alicia, a friend of the show, who asked if I would do a Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and no. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I just do not have the time. Between the other podcasts I do, like the Depeche Mode podcast, and between the books that I write. Yes, I write books. I'm going to talk about them here in just a second. Adding another podcast or just doing a singular podcast on the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not something that I have time to go and do, but I always appreciate your feedback. So write me this week. It's the holiday season, and I want to hear from you. All right, before I wrap the show up, if this is one of your first times listening to the show, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. And I want to let you know that if you want to support my Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast, because I do this for free out of my love of Star Wars and my love of you. You can support the show, though, by going and picking up a copy or copies or the entire series of my EMBARK science fiction space opera series, available at mynerdworld.net or on Amazon.com. Search for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice. 6 books in the series currently, available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook, with a 7th book that I am working on and should be out sometime late January. I was writing more of it today. For those that are thinking, that's cool, Jon, but what is this story about? What will I find out in these books? Well, I'm here to tell you. Katha dreamed. Let me promo this correctly. Katha dreamed of traveling beyond the known galaxy. Now humanity's survival will depend on it. This is EMBARK Book 1. A year after her beloved aerospace engineer father mysteriously passed away, headstrong pilot Katha Morrow discovers he left something behind for only her to find. Her excitement quickly turns to fear when she learns that an industrial accident inside a D-Corp civilian and military spacecraft factory has sparked an apocalyptic chain of events. While the ruthless Sin Argum of D-Corp attempts to exploit the global evacuation and gain control, Katha realizes the significance of what she's found and can't escape her destiny. As Earth evacuees stand on the brink of annihilation, with the help of a ragtag squadron of pilots, Katha might be humanity's greatest and only hope against the tyranny of D-Corp's evil leader. Now, I got some specials going on right now. You can pick up the ebook for book 1 for just 99 cents. And if you want to get the opening trilogy, which does tell an entire story, it does culminate in a grand finale, as the story does continue in Book 4, Gahan Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune, which is also available for 99 cents and can be read as a standalone adventure, or Book 4 in the EMBARK series. You can pick up the trilogy in ebook for only $2.99. So you can get the first book for 99 cents, the ebook, or you can pick up the entire trilogy for just $2.99 in ebook. So if you want to support the show, go pick yourself up a copy. If you're not a reader, but you know somebody who is a science fiction reader, you can gift them a copy right there on Amazon.com. They give you a convenient little link right there on the right-hand side. It says, gift this to somebody, and say, hey, I listen to this podcast, Jon Justice, and I want to support him, and I know you like to read, and I want to support your reading habit. Here is this book of this podcaster that I listen to. I think you might enjoy it, and if you don't, it's fine, because you didn't pay for it. How great is that? So go to Amazon.com, search for Jon, Jon Justice, and EMBARK, or just go to mynerdworld.net. That is the website for all things My Nerd World. There are links right there on the homepage. And one last thing before I go. Speaking of getting stuff and free, there are a whole bunch of free Audible book audiobook codes. Audible audiobook codes available on the website right now for EMBARK Treasure in Darkness Book 2. So, if you picked up Book 1 in audiobook and you were like, it was okay, but you didn't get Book 2, now you can for free. So you can give Book 2 a shot. If you go to mynerdworld.net, on the homepage, again, there's a link right there. It says free Audible book audiobook codes. You click on it, it'll take you to the blog, and there on the blog are a whole bunch of codes where you can go and download a free copy. It's like 8 hours of content right there for free. A free copy of EMBARK Treasure in Darkness Book 2 in audiobook, available now for free at mynerdworld.net. And then go pick yourself up a copy of the entire 6-book series, with Book 7 coming out next year. All right, that's it. Not watching Star Wars tonight. My son's favorite movie is Interstellar, so the whole family are all going to get together. We're going to have breakfast for dinner, and we're going to watch Interstellar together, and I'm excited about it. So I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe, right? And remember, fear is the path to the dark side, right? Anger leads to fear. Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Don't let that be the mantra of your holiday season. All right, we'll be back again next week. Thank you so much for checking the show out, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.